Hello Internet!
This is Piou Piou.
And this is Azrod. A lot have been going on and we are going to talk to you about it. If you watched the last video, you know that one of the goats died recently.
But did you know that the same day, our dog broke our tent while we were out buying some salt to preserve our goat meat?
The damage of the dog in questions. And later the goats also torn apart part of this tarp. So we have installed a whole new system of tarp on top of us to preserve ourselves from the rain. And we move the rain collector here on a more or less stable place.
And did you know that the same day, France and all of Europe turned fascist?
We had the result of the election of the European Parliament, and almost all Europe got fascist, aside from Belgium and Ireland.
And did you know that the same day, after our fascist party in France, the RN, dared our president to dissolve the National Assembly, our president did it!
Because it's such a good idea to dissolve the French Assembly when fascism is at the door of power and not when there are almost 1 million people in the streets because of a reform.
Oh, and guess what?
The president also had the great idea of choosing the shortest delay for the campaign, and they freeze the electoral pool so that only the people that voted during the European could vote. So, in a nutshell, they did everything so that fascists could win.
We are pretty sure that our French president planned to do exactly the same as Putin, meaning quit
The office.
presidency, the office. So another, backed up president governs the country for a few months, so he can present himself to the next election and do 3 mandats next to one another. Because we just got here, we couldn't subscribe to the voting list for the European election. As soon as the dissolution of the assembly happened, we went to the mairie so we could vote for the legislative election. However, the president decided otherwise, so we will need to make a procuration.
To vote in a city 10,000 kilometers apart from us. I know it looks like the president just wanted fascists in power, but actually it was supposed to be a clever plan. You see, a lot of the population don't like the president because they see him as an authoritarian that uses police rather than talk with the people. For example, during the reform of the retirement plan in France, they added 2 years of work to people, and they presented it as a need because there was a deficiency. This was widely debunked, and a lot of alternative solution was proposed, and we had massive protests in the country. But in France, we have something that's called the 49.3. That is a special decree that allows the Prime Minister of bypass the voting of the Assembly by putting the authority of the French Assembly on the line. And if a majority, but only a clear majority of the deputy vote against it, then the government is dissolved. This is the president that used this decree the most, despite it being described as absolutely anti-democratic.
On top of taking all the money for social services such as social security that we have in France, such as education, of course, the government is giving 200 billion euro in subventions to private companies.
So you may ask yourself, how did the president win the election and how wasn't the government already dissolved?
Well, that's simple, my friend, because our governments are all corrupted. Because politicians are paid a lot. Like, for example, in France, the minimum wage is around 1,300 and some shits euros, while our politicians earn about 7,000 euro. So, first of all, how can we expect people that are getting paid this much for a living to not, I don't know, betray the people?
And this is on top of all the social benefits they have, such as free train. So, because some politicians wanted to save their job, it wasn't in their best interest to have the dissolution of the assembly. But because the president was becoming hated by all the party, the last party willing to ally with the government started to retreat and stop wanted the alliance.
For a long time, the government that said to be in the centers aligned with what's supposed to be left and what's supposed to be right parties to gain the majority at the assembly. This shows that our politicians nowadays are more interested by their personal interests, which makes sense because how will you live if you lose the 7,000 euro you gain per month? And are less interested by their personal beliefs.
So by proclaiming the dissolution before the motion of censure that was supposed to happen, the French government was one step ahead of the other party.
To give you an idea, when the dissolution of the assembly was announced, the president only gave us 20 days until the election, which only leaves 3 days for the parties that wish to participate to register.
20 days is the smallest amount of time possible. To give you an idea, the biggest amount would have been 40 days. And even then, it's possible to say that the government will be dissolved starting a certain date, giving way more time for the participants to organize.
Of course, the election is taking place during the summer vacation because democracy.
So with everything we said, you are probably thinking, maybe, that the president wants the fascists in power. Well, that's not the case, actually. Well, maybe, I don't know. But
Well, actually, the president has been using the same
party trick.
Oh?
Party trick.
The same party trick for years now, because he was elected for a second time a few years ago by saying, if you don't want the fascists in power, vote for me. And he's trying to do the same right now. However, this party trick seems to end.
Because he only did 15% during the election of the European, which is really small. While the fascists did 33%. So the idea was to have everyone disorganized, aside from him, and the fascist, because this way he would have his little duel.
However, the plan kind of backfired because the right party decided to align with the fascist party, and because the left centrist party decided to align with what the government calls the far left parties.
And for the first time in a while, the left party have created a united front called the New Popular Front in reference to something that happened in the 1930s in France. A short crash course in history. Because of this front in the 30s, we have the weekends and paid holidays and the 35 hours of work a week.
I'm pretty sure that's because of the old Front Populaire that French are known to be really bad workers.
But we prefer the term stubborn, because we believe that work is exploitation, as long as it is under capitalism. You need to understand how impressive this is. In just 3 days, multiple parties who had a history of being in disagreement ally all of their forces to resist the rise of fascism in France.
Actually, for the previous legislative elections, we also had a unionizing of the parties, of the leftist parties. However, they quickly dissolved after the election because they only unionize for like political personal benefits.
Once they had 7,000 euro a month, yeah, you don't need a union, you just want to be paid.
We plan to vote for this Front Populaire despite the fact that we know that after being in power, most of them will probably just betray the beliefs that they're getting elected right now on.
Because we don't trust politicians, but we don't trust even more fascists.
This new Front Populaire wants to put retirement at 60 years old, wants to put the tax on the rich again, the ISF, impôt sur la fortune, basically tax the rich again, want to put menstrual protections,
Refunded.
Wants to refund by the Social Security menstrual protection, also want to add menstrual leaves. They want to stop sending guns to Israel and also recognize Palestine as a country. They want to add a status for climatic refugees because on the other side the fascists want to send all immigrants, which by the way, some of them are not immigrants, they're just French people that are not the correct color for the fascists, back to other countries.
They also want to block prices on products of basic necessity. Allow for easier change of gender and name, I think, for people. Stop some of the ecocidal projects that have been going on, such as the mega basin that we talk about in another video. In a nutshell, creating giant concrete pool for the big farmers that have the most monies.
Oh, and of course they want to abrogate the 49.3 so democracy can exist again.
But that is only if they get elected, and nowadays most of the biggest media are privately owned, thanks to the French president, of course. So we have a bunch of propaganda saying that their program is impossible because it will cost too much, because they are anti-Semitic, because they support Palestine, because all of the extremist parties are the same.
Of course, all the private owned media are owned by billionaires that are fascist too. What a shame! And did you know that the RN, so the fascist party that might be elected in a few weeks in France, wants to stop totally public media, meaning that only extra rich people will be able to propagate on everyone else.
Because freedom of speech is an overrated right, of course. And so is freedom of information. Who needs this kind of stuff?
And so is freedom to learn, because of course having little soldiers to send to the war is a far better future for humanity. Oh, and did you know that our government wants to, in 2026, non pas 2026, non 2026, so, and did you know that our government wants to apply in 2026 the SNU, which is basically a military service that is obligatory for all youth. Mandatory for all youth.
If you don't know, France, despite being really small, is the second exporter of weapons in the world.
So this politics kind of makes sense when you know that. But I don't know, I rather prefer being a humanist than sending the youth to war.
Ouais. So, yeah, a lot of things happened in the last few days, and a lot of other things will happen in the next few weeks, and we are going to do our best to keep you updated. Also, we have found this big pool of water, and we hope it's going to keep some for the harsh summer that is coming. Because otherwise we are going to need to go to the next town to have water.
Look! An aquatic dog!
Meanwhile, we have collected bamboos to create walls. We are going to use them to support the tarp on top of our tent. And in the future, this will going to be the basis for us small houses for the goats. But for now, this will be able to protect us from the damage this dog, for example, can cause to our tent. And now the fun part of transporting the bamboos on top of the hill. Apparently the goat likes to eat our construction materials. Hopefully when they are wolves, they won't eat them. We love you and appreciate you. See you. Bye. We are doing bread.